welcome to another episode of Create Brevity. I'm your host, eDirector, and for this episode, we're just going to do basically part 2 of what we went over last week, which was talking about self-concept and core beliefs, how to turn them around, how to be authentic, but essentially, we kind of left off with awareness. That's the first step. When you're doing any kind of belief work or you're doing anything that involves your self-concept, the first thing that you have to do is just be aware of what's going on. That you are driven by internal programming that was hardwired into you based on an experience that you had, usually when you were younger, and you attached meaning to it, right? You perceived it as meaning something about you, right? That's the sort of story that you spun about it. And I gave that example of my babysitter putting me in the bathroom when she was supposed to be watching me, and how I kind of used that as a basis for a belief that I wasn't worth it. And I internalized it, and I kind of, and again, this is subconscious, right? I internalized it and I used that story, and then anytime anything bad would happen or something negative, negative circumstances would occur, I would use those circumstances as a way of reaffirming that belief. And it would kind of just affirm that belief again on a body level, right? So in order to release it, the first thing that we have to do is be aware of what's going on. And a lot of times with some of these real core beliefs and these really negative stories, they're actually physically sort of trapped in our body. Because a lot of times when something really painful happens like that, it's very emotional, you have an internal response to it. It actually hurts, right? And the reason why it hurts is your head and your heart are fighting each other. No one really wants to believe terrible things about themselves, right? And because at the end of the day, I think subconsciously we know how great we are. But it's just we beat it into our body, right? Into our hearts with constant negative thoughts and negative programming. So you're like, no, I want to be okay. I'm a good person. I'm worth it, right? That's what your heart is trying to pump out. And your brain, right, those negative thoughts, just keep hitting it over and over again until you just learn that it is safer and that it actually hurts less not to fight it. So you absorb it, and because you never got to have the actual emotional response in the moment, right, whether it was, having your feelings heard, right, or whether it was just being respected, for your judgment, or maybe it was that you felt trapped in a situation you couldn't get out of, right? Whatever it is, the feeling of it, you had a bodily response to it as well as a mental response. And your whatever emotional response that you had, it kind of manifests itself as both. So you had negative thoughts about it, but then you also had that negative physical reaction that's trapped. A lot of times for a lot of people, it's, if you do chakra work, for example, that can kind of be a good start and kind of pinpoint what parts of your body you're feeling the negativity. But, if you don't know anything about that, it's very simple. Basically, when you notice the anxious response, or you feel that sort of angry, kind of defensive response, right? Whatever reaction you're having, however you're being triggered, just take a second. Don't react for that 1 second if it's possible. And I want you to see if you can feel where it's coming from. Again, we talked about in the last podcast, but this is really important. The awareness part is really key. Because once you can start understanding that this is a feeling, right, it's going to pass, you're going to feel normal again, okay? And once you understand that this feeling, releasing it, allowing it, okay, accepting it is the key, then it becomes a lot easier to kind of distance yourself from that emotional response. Because you're going to kind of almost see yourself doing it in a way. You're gonna be able to take a step back where you won't immediately go into fight mode, right? Or flight, right? I had a question from a listener, and she was kind of talking about how when she feels a lot of stress or she feels, tension, right? She wants to kind of leave the room, right? Or get rid of the tension. She's a bit of a people pleaser, which is something I can relate to because I definitely had that as well when I was younger. And I just want you guys to know that the thing is, people pleasing is a form of flight, right? It's that fight or flight response. People pleasing is a form of flight. It's leaving a situation. You don't want to deal with it, right? You don't want to deal with the anger or the shame or embarrassment, whatever is happening right now, or whatever you think is happening. You don't want to deal with it. You'd rather kind of leave. So one way that you kind of fly away, right, from that is by doing everything you can to kind of brush those emotions aside because you don't want to deal with them. But unfortunately, just like the fight response, right, in this situation, neither is warranted. Neutral energy is the best energy to have for manifesting. It really is. Neutral energy is what kind of drops the resistance. And honestly, being able to see things neutrally as not being about you and as not some sort of faded response, okay, is going to be just better for your overall well-being, right? Because I don't know about you, but I'm very uncomfortable, right, when I am in a situation that I feel like I cannot control. And instead of trying to control the external, right, if I can go in, right, and I can kind of look at things from a different perspective, if I can shift, okay, I can go back into a neutral energy, right? And that makes me feel better because A, emotionally, I'm accepting and I'm releasing, but also B, because I'm realizing that I do have control, right? I have control over myself. I have control over my reaction. It's not that involuntary thing anymore, okay? So that's why awareness is really important. Now, moving along, after awareness, okay, you're going to have to ask yourself, okay, and this is where we sort of start to dig into the negative beliefs and the core wounds, right? Where is this coming from, right? Start to ask yourself where it's coming from. And you will get negative images, right? You're going to get a bodily response, right? You're going to start remembering things, even. And that's basically you trying to answer your own question, that internal question that you have about basically where you're trying to figure out what it is that's causing these wounds. What is the actual wound, right? These are all triggering something that's never been healed, right? Something that's been festering, clearly. So even if it's uncomfortable, in that moment, when you're aware, when you have that self-awareness, ask yourself where it's coming from, okay? Kind of go within, okay? And ask yourself why. If you're having a weird reaction to something someone said, ask yourself why, right? Is it really what they said, okay? Or is it just how I'm perceiving it, okay? Now, yes, absolutely, there are times where people will not behave well. They'll behave badly towards you. But, that is part of the cycle of life, right? Life is a balance. So you're going to have people that are amazing and people that are negative. But your reaction is what's important in this situation. If someone's behaving negatively to you, okay, you can stand up for yourself. You can, defend the people around you, right? You can walk away. Why is it that you choose to take that as something negative about yourself? As if to take responsibility for their bad behavior, right? As if to say, this person is negative to me because I'm not worth it, for example. Why do you feel this way? Why are you being triggered in this direction? Okay? And once you start really seeing yourself get triggered and you start seeing kind of the chain reaction, someone will say something or do something, you don't like it, you get triggered, you go into one of your protective personalities or protective modes, right? And you activate, okay? You activate that fight or flight response, right? And once you start seeing yourself do that, okay, and you can kind of pull back a little bit, ask yourself why. Why does that trigger you? Okay? And you're going to get the answers. You're going to get reminded of the time that you were 7, for example, and people made fun of you in class, okay? Or the time that you didn't feel, that you were heard by a specific person, okay? So once you identify the wound, once you identify your negative belief, okay? And just so you guys know, most people do not have, a massive amount of negative beliefs, right? They don't have a plethora of them. They usually just have one or two that kind of are the root of most of their troubles, so to speak, right? You don't have 50 things going on, okay? It's usually just one or two. And sometimes if you really think about it and you go internally, it's just one really big one, okay? And whenever you figure out what that is, okay, I want you to kind of ask yourself, okay, what about this wound? Okay, what about this is something that happened to you? Is something that you did? Okay, I want you to examine it, right? For a lot of people, they have really negative memories associated with something, right? And for a lot of people, when they don't really want to remember the incident or the memory because it's been really painful. So it might have been something that they actually think about a lot. It actually pops into their head and they just push it away, right? So when you identify that this is sort of like the main event, the main starting point, the main catalyst, I want you to sit with that memory and kind of really remember it if it's possible, okay? Examine it from that self-aware standpoint that we talked about, where you're kind of stepped back from being in the memory itself. You're a little bit detached, okay? And you can kind of start to see it, okay, from a more analytical point of view almost. Because a lot of times the memory will happen, you'll get sucked in, and again, you'll have that emotional response, right? But if you can kind of distance yourself from it, and you should have already had some practice because you've gotten this far, right? Because you've been able to kind of distance yourself from it. You've gotten some perspective and some self-awareness. I want you to really remember it. And I want you to understand that most of the time for people, the memory, if they think about it rationally, or if they think about it from the perspective of anyone else, okay, they are able to kind of sort of see that, no, actually, I didn't deserve that. No, actually, I am worth it. I am more valuable than that experience. That experience really didn't have anything to do with me, right? So for example, like I said in the last episode, when I was put in the bathroom, right, and I was locked in when my babysitter should have been with me, she should have been watching me, I remember feeling hurt and embarrassed and angry. And as an adult, when I was able to process this memory and I was able to look at it rationally and actually let myself be there again and feel helpless, I realized that I really had no control in that situation, right? What was done to me was not done because I was a bad kid or because I did something wrong. It had nothing to do with me. It was about her. It was about this teenager, right? Who was just being irresponsible, okay? Who, looking back now, I can see was essentially almost a child herself, right? She was a high schooler, but nevertheless still, an adolescent. And she probably wanted to hang out with her friends and didn't want me around, right? And that is something that I can understand. It's not something that I agree with. I don't condone her behavior in any type of way. And I don't think that she did the right thing at all. But you can kind of go to yourself and say, you know what? I understand that this decision making was her best decision making in the moment. This is what she was working with, okay? And this is what I got. And it doesn't have anything to do with me, okay? It doesn't have anything to do with my behavior, right? I didn't have any control in that situation. I was the victim in that situation. And once you can kind of hear that and see it in your mind and accept it, okay, and you can kind of understand it, okay, then all of those old feelings, right, guilt and shame and embarrassment, right, if anxiety about whether you did something wrong or what you contributed to it, okay, it can kind of go away because you are now in the decision that actually, no, that's her thing, not mine, right? That was her issue. That was her decision, not mine. The only thing I can control now, okay, is my reaction. The only thing I can control now is how I'm going to let this affect me, okay? Now that I have all this perspective on it, now that I am an adult, okay, how am I going to let it affect me, right? Am I going to let something like this derail me every time that something similar happens, or I feel similarly? I get a similar emotion, right? Like a rejection emotion, or I feel embarrassed about something, okay? Am I going to get triggered, right? Because that's technically allowing that incident to control where you are now, okay? And you're going to need to let go of that, because a lot of times these core wounds and these negative beliefs, right, they are a massive part of the resistance when you're trying to manifest, right? Because it's really hard to tell yourself, right, and to live in the assumption, okay, and to live in the manifestation, to visualize, right, if every 5 seconds you're getting a little negative thought in your head saying, but you're not really going to get that, but you're not though, but you're not worthy, but remember that when this happened and this and this and that, and it's just trying to kind of fight you. So now you're in this state where you're just kind of having this battle between your heart and your head, between where you want to be and where you think that you are, okay? So let's review the steps again. First things first is to be really aware of what's going on, okay? And then start to examine where the core wound is, right? What is the core wound? Why am I reacting this way? Those are some great questions you can ask yourself. Then you're going to get into trying to figure out if you can actually kind of be apart from the memory, be apart from the wound a little bit, okay? You can see the wound as something that's not a part of you, okay? Right? Remember, you are amazing as you are. You are worth it. You are valuable, okay? There's nothing wrong with you, okay? Whatever wound you have, whatever negative belief that you have, it's not a part of you, okay? It's something that you've put in your way. It's something that you have in your head, okay? But it's something you can let go of, right? And it's coming up so you can release it, so you can let go of it, okay? So kind of detach from the wound, see if there's a memory or several, right, that you've kind of used to affirm this negative belief, and detach yourself from it. Let it go. Remind yourself that this, okay, happened to you, and this feeling that you had at the time, that was you reacting the best way that you knew how. Whatever was done to you by someone else or said to you by someone else, that was them reacting the best way they knew how, okay? But you can control how you react now. Whatever happened then, you couldn't control it. At this point in time, you can't control it. But now you can control how you move forward, okay? So you're going to start thinking along those lines, and you're going to start letting it go. Every time it pops up, and it will pop up frequently at first, right? Because it wants to protect you. Remember, your head, the reason it's having all these negative beliefs is because it doesn't want you to put yourself in situations where it thinks you're going to suffer. Okay? So, for example, with my the babysitter situation, after that happened, I realized that I have a little bit more barriers in place when it comes to trusting people I just met. Okay? I definitely want to protect myself. I want to make sure that this is a good person, right? And I also have, like I said earlier in the podcast, there's something in me that it does people please, right? Whenever I get into tense situations or quote unquote tension filled situations, pretty much any situation that has, disagreement, right? I want to smooth it out because I don't want, okay, I don't want to feel rejected, right? I don't want to feel embarrassed, right? So I smooth it out, regardless of that, if it's how I really feel, regardless if it's what I really want to be doing, right? That's how I would react, right? So I had sort of those two things going on to try to protect me, to try to say, you know what, you don't want to get isolated again, you don't want to be rejected again, okay? Go ahead and let's just smooth this out. And that in itself is also a protective instinct and a protective personality. But actually, once I did the work, and I examined what was going on, I realized that, truth be told, I actually want to be authentic, right? I want people to like me for me. And if I get rejected for myself, it's actually better, right, than to be accepted for someone that I'm not, right? I don't want to pretend to have a certain personality type. So I was able to really let go of some of those protective instincts. Now, they still come up every once in a while, right? Under stress or when I get particularly triggered. But it's a lot easier for me to just go, you know what? I get where this is coming from, okay? I see you, right? I see the feeling, right? I know what it's triggering. And I know, once again, all that stuff in the past is out of my control, right? It happened, it's done, right? But I can control my reaction and I can focus on what I want, okay? And I can focus on my manifestation rather than being in the doldrums, rather than constantly fighting my head about whether or not I deserve something or whether or not I'm good enough for something or whatever negative beliefs are popping in your head. Okay, so I hope this helps. Genuinely, I think core belief work is really important, right? And as I explained in the last episode, I genuinely think that when Neville Goddard said feeling is the secret, this is what he was talking about. He was talking about that overall feeling that you have about yourself, right? The overall groundedness, okay, that you experience when you start treating yourself like you're worth it, when you just accept it, right? Remember, there's a part of you that's already there, and it is so tired, right? Pushing back against all the other thoughts and memories that are trying to disagree with it, okay? So when you can let go, when you can forgive yourself sometimes, okay, for feeling bad, right? When you can really get grounded in that, right? Grounded in your own body, that feeling of groundedness, of accepting yourself, of self-love, I think that that is the secret to manifesting, right? Because after that, of course, you might still see circumstances, you might still get irritated and bothered, but it's not going to be nearly, okay, as probably not going to be nearly as intense, and it doesn't last as long, and you can kind of shift out of it and just really out of that perception a lot faster, okay? And you're going to be able to really understand what I mean when I say it's a balance, right? Because right now it's really hard for people who are really in their negative belief, right, or really ungrounded, to see that balance because they feel like they're in so much red, they're in so much negativity, right? And they're just kind of like, what balance, right? I'm just completely on the other end of the seesaw, okay? But once you smooth it out and you get grounded, you're going to be able to see the positive things, right? You're going to be able to see where all of these negative experiences actually helped you. I feel like having that experience with my babysitter actually did help me in some ways because I'm a lot more compassionate, right? I am able to, even though using it as a protective instinct is wrong, being able to kind of read people and read situations, okay, can be a benefit, right? Nothing is bad unless it's taken to the extreme, right? So I was only able to get these perspectives though because I was able to kind of distance myself from the wound, right? I didn't immediately go into that shame spiral or anxious spiral or embarrassment. I didn't immediately go into feeling rejected. I was able to detach and actually see the situation, okay, from an outside perspective in a way. And like I said, once I was able to do that, I could actually see some positives. Okay. And when you start being able to see the positives, you can kind of get back into that balance again, right? So anytime a negative circumstance pops up, you can just say to yourself, you know what? I see this circumstance for what it is. It's not forever because everything is a balance. Okay. And I would not give up one moment of happiness, okay, just to make this go away, right? So I'm just going to take this, okay, I'm going to see it for what it is, and I'm going to live in my assumption. I'm going to visualize. I'm going to live in my manifestation because I know I'm worth it. This is just 1 second, okay? This is just the 3D, right? And the only thing that I can control, and the only thing I need to control, is my reaction, right? Is who I am on the inside, okay? All right, guys, so I hope this helps. I really hope you guys enjoyed kind of this, a little bit of going back to basics, I guess, right? But a very important basic, right? And honestly, it's a friend of mine said something, and it was a really perfect way of describing it. It's our life's work, right? To become the people that we're supposed to be. So just consider, don't think of this as just set it and forget it and you're done, right? Think of this as something that you're going to be calibrating your whole life. Okay, you're going to be adjusting, right? Because as you grow, right, in one direction, you're going to grow in another. Okay, so don't think of it as going backwards if you find that you have to do more belief work or you're finding different, core wounds. Okay, don't think of it that way. You're always making progress because you're never giving up on yourself and you're never giving up on your manifestation because it's already yours. Anything you can imagine, anything you think of, anything you see and do, it already belongs to you. Okay, guys, thanks so much for listening. Love and light.